And then she said to me, if you stop selling Halloween, the Lord will replace your lost business in other ways. And I laughed at her. I thought she was a fruitcake. But then 6 months later, I'm a Christian. So I thought, I'm not going to sell Halloween this year.
Costly.
Massive risk. We sell loads of it. I threw away all the stock that I had left. The best bit of the story was what the lady said to me September, October of 1991. We had the biggest increase in turnover in 1 month than we'd ever experienced. Now, people might say, oh, that's a coincidence. Yeah, okay, could be a coincidence, but the trouble is it keeps working.
Welcome, everybody. This is Simon Gilbo with Inspired. Great to be back for another fantastic week of hearing from another mate of mine in terms of what the Lord has done in and through him. We are relentlessly bombarded by rubbish, negativity, bad news that just induces fear and anxiety and cynicism. And I think why Inspired is so beautiful and fruitful is because it's so good to hear fantastic, positive stories that just bring faith and challenge and inspiration into our lives. So this week, I've got zero doubt you're going to be inspired because we've got with us all the way from Jersey right now, Gary Grant. Welcome, Gary.
Good morning.
So good to have you. So Gary is the founder of The Entertainer, which has got, I don't know, is it coming up 200? How many stores have you got now?
About 165 stores, plus a very, very large expanding relationship with a number of partners, Matalan, Marks and Spencer's, Tesco's. So by the end of this year, we'll be selling toys in over 1,200 locations.
Absolutely
in the UK.
Wonderful. Gary and I first crossed paths about 20 years ago. It was actually a Glow fundraiser. We were sat next to each other, and actually our offices near Chesham at Latimer Park Estate on the massive 360-acre property that Gary and Kath, his wife, they bought and sort of, I don't know exactly the relationship, sort of bequeathed it, but Restore Hope is a charity that he set up with Sue and Dave Trevor and with his wife Kath, obviously. And anyway, listen, I don't want to say much more, Gary. Let's just get into it. You've got this wonderful stories and it's an incredible journey. I've heard you talk a number of times. You didn't have an easy start, did you? It was a relatively rough childhood?
Yeah, life was tough as a kid, but I was born in 58 in Wembley. When I was 3, my parents divorced and mum moved me and I had a 1-year-old sister to Little Chalfont, where literally meters from where Restore Hope is today. And really, I've lived all my life in and around Amersham. But growing up in the 60s, when divorce wasn't really that common, there were lots and lots of challenges. In fact, there's probably lots of challenges for children today. You know, you get questions like, my mum had 2 more children. Why's your sister got a different surname to you? So there's all those questions as a young child. They're really challenging. Mm-hmm. And I really found that it was easier just to be out the house than the aggravation that I was getting at home. And I joined the Cubs when I was 6. And some of your older listeners will remember Bob a Job Week, where you had a card at Easter and you used to go and knock on doors and do a job and they gave you a bob. And half your younger listeners haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. But that's a shilling and you still haven't got a clue. Well, there were 20 of those to £1. So Bob a Job Week, 20 bob, that was £1. You did 20 jobs, got 20 bob and gave your £1 and your card back to the Scouts. But that's when I realised actually there were jobs to be done. Mm-hmm. And even as a young child, you know, there was money to be earned. And we had no money in the family. So if I wanted anything, I had to either earn it or steal it. So I tried earning it, and I did car washing and raking up leaves and all sorts of things. And just one little story, I remember on a Saturday, my job was to go up the bread shop and get a long split tin loaf of bread. And I remember as it was getting nearer Christmas, I saw that box of biscuits in the bread shop. And I thought I could buy that for my mum for Christmas. But how on earth am I going to get 10 shillings and sixpence? So I thought I'll have to go and get a job. So I knocked on a couple of larger houses in Chalfont, and I said, if you've got a job I can do, I'm trying to earn 10 shillings to buy this box of biscuits for my mum for Christmas. And a lady said, yeah, if you come every Saturday, I'll find you a little bit of work to do. And that might be picking up, she had some chickens, so I collected the eggs, raked up some leaves. I think she just made up the jobs for me to do. But when I finished, there was a glass of orange on the kitchen table, a bun, and 2 and 6. 12.5p. So 4 weeks of working, I had now 10 shillings. And I went into this bread shop and I said, that box of biscuits over there, that's 10 and 6. Well, I haven't got 10 and 6, but I've got 10 shillings. Can we do a deal? And they said yes. So that's when I think I realised at a very early age that most prices on things are just, that everything's negotiable. So I guess from a early age, I was a negotiator. And then when I was 8, we moved from Little Chalfont, just one stop up the underground map of London. So if you know London at all, you know the underground map. Little Chalfont is the second from the top left, and Amersham is the top left. Mm-hmm. So it was only a couple of miles up the road. And we started a new life in a new house because there were now 4 children and my mum and her partner. I went to a new school, failed my 11 plus. We live in Buckinghamshire. We've got a grammar school system. And that's really tough because there's no different degrees. It's either pass or fail, So I went to the school for failures along with loads of other guys that have done amazingly well in life. But it's amazing how you pick up labels. Yeah. And it's really important that whether you're academic or not, and I wasn't academic, I left school with 1 O-level in maths. It's really important that whatever you're saying to children in particular, speak positive words over children. Draw the best out of those children. If they're outstanding at running, then really encourage them in running. Don't compare them with being a solicitor or an accountant or something else. Just make them feel great about themselves because they're an outstanding athlete. Because every child needs somebody to believe in them. Every child needs to hear the words "well done." Yeah. Not like my school reports, which always said could do better.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife Lizzie failed her 11 plus, and that was a defining moment for her of feeling like she was a failure for years.
Well, more so, particularly in Buckinghamshire, because children are trying to keep up with their parents' aspirations. The parents all want them to go to the grammar school, but I wouldn't have survived the grammar school. It wasn't the right school for me. Yeah. We've had 4 children and 9 grandchildren, but of our 4 children, they went to 3 different schools because it was the school that was right for them, not just trying to put everybody in a box and call us all the same. We're not all the same. We learn differently. We have different skills and talents. And we say we just got to bring out the best skills and talents we can in everybody.
Yeah. I think Richard Branson was a dyslexic, wasn't he? You're dyslexic, so it doesn't preclude doing stellar things in life, does it?
It doesn't, but back in the 1960s and 70s, dyslexia wasn't understood or even recognised, and you just got labelled as a disruptive child. Yeah. And I spent so many hours standing outside classrooms. It was challenging, and I think we've got a greater understanding of children's more hidden disabilities now than we had then. So a couple of our children are dyslexic, but you can take them to the Dyslexic Institute. They can do their tests, and they're allowed extra time. But the problem is, even with spell check, first of all, the spell check sometimes just doesn't understand. You need neighbour. You try spelling neighbour, it's completely impossible. So however I try and spell it, expecting my spell check to put it right, doesn't work. But the other thing is, when the spell check changes the word that you meant to say to a word that you didn't mean to say, you don't realise it's the wrong word. So you send some emails out and they make no sense whatsoever. Luckily enough, people know me, so as long as it's not a rude email or something, then they get it. They worked out what I really did mean to say, not what it did say.
Yeah. So you come out of school age 16. I mean, you are very good at maths, aren't you? So that's your one sort of redeeming subject.
I am good at maths. So I'm pretty good at mental arithmetic. So I leave school with 1 O-level. I'd had so many jobs whilst I was at senior school, from paper rounds to I worked in a milk float. I worked in my scout mistress's sweet shop. In fact, I worked there, I think it was in 1994, where we went decimalised from the old money to the new money, when 6 old pence became 2.5 new p. That was the nearest equivalent. And I worked in a bike shop. And when I was leaving school, Mum took an interest in me. She said, you ought to go and work for John Lewis's. So she took me to John Lewis's in Oxford Street, which is about probably an hour, the train drive and walking to the store. And I did the interview, and they said, finally, we're offering you a job. You've got a job. So I said, oh, great, fantastic. So this is about, 1975. I said, how much? What's the pay? £25 a week. So I thought, £25 a week. Okay, that sounds like a lot of money. It was a lot of money in those days. But I said to Mum, how much is the train fare to London every month? £25 a month. I said, well, I've got to work a whole week every month just to pay the train fare. I'm
Mm.
not doing that. So we had a little bit of a bust up over that because I didn't want to waste my time. It was 2 hours a day travelling and a quarter of my income
Yeah.
on the train fare. So not to be deterred, she took me to Watford to John Lewis's. It was then called Truins Brothers. They gave me a job. I said to Mum, how do I get to Watford from Amersham? We get the train from Amersham halfway into London to Croxley Green, get off that train, get on another train to go to Watford. And the Watford Underground station is not in Watford, so there's a 20-minute walk. So you can imagine where that conversation went. So I didn't go and work for John Lewis's, and I left school and went to work for the bicycle shop in Amersham that I worked at as a Saturday boy and after school and school holidays.
And I seem to remember you sort of had some parallel track business thing that ended up getting you fired.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a story there. So in the mid about 1976, there was a skateboard boom in the UK. It was one of those products that arrived that had never been out there before. It wasn't something that had changed. Nobody had ever seen a plank of wood or a piece of plastic with four wheels on the bottom before. And during 1976, 1977, 1978, we sold thousands of skateboards in the bike shop. And the market was so buoyant. And children started off with a plastic coyote board at £15, but then as they progressed, they wanted something that was slicker, faster. They wanted all the labels on it. They wanted the Kryptonic wheels and the ACS trucks. So it wasn't uncommon because we sold all those American components were all in. You bought the bits you wanted, then they got put together for you. So it wasn't uncommon for somebody to spend £125 on a skateboard back in the mid to late 70s.
Wow.
It was very expensive, but it was a phenomenal business. But in 1970, not Christmas of 1979, the skateboard market completely collapsed. It was as though they were banned. You just couldn't sell them. So Christmas was good, but after Christmas was terrible. And the fad had gone. And in the toy industry, we have lots of fads, things that come and go, loom bands, spinners. There's always a craze on that the children are collecting them. It could be their football stickers, whatever it might happen to be, all those playground crazes. And I was offered some wheels by a managing director of Flexello Casters who lived in Little Chalfont, and I knew my boss wouldn't be interested in sort of trading, so I took the samples and basically I sold the bearings from the wheels to a company in London and the wheels to a company up in the Midlands. And that's how I got going in business, really. Kath and I also missed a big thing out. Kath and I had got married. We were married in August 1979. So we had this small terraced house in Haigsmere, just outside High Wycombe. And on a Thursday, which was my day off, and I bought and sold skateboards to all sorts of different companies, but I mainly sold them to two. But then I went to work in January 1981. And my boss was fed up with me having phone calls coming into the shop for people asking for me because, again, all your younger listeners that can communicate in seconds on their mobile phones, not a phone plugged in the wall. Back in 1980, 1981, communication was either by a letter, an email, a telegram, or by a plug-in-the-wall phone. There was no other way of communicating with people. So if I was at work all day and I wanted to speak to people during the day because they were at work, because in the evening when I was at home they weren't at work, they rang me at the shop, and that didn't last. So January 81, I got fired, and we'd accumulated a little bit of money that we'd made as we'd sold skateboard stock, and I needed a job. The toy shop came on the market and we thought we'll have a go at toys. So we bought this toy shop. We opened it on the 5th of May 1981 and off we go. Start buying and selling toys. Lovely people. I look back over my life and I can see stepping stones of people that have directed me, kept me on the straight and narrow, and I've often thought, why did they do that? Why were they so kind? Why did they didn't need to do that and help me? And it's a bit like passing the baton forward, which is why today I'm just so passionate about making sure that young people get every amount of helping hand they possibly can, because you're potentially changing that life, and you're going to change a whole family's life.
Yeah. Well, I'm just interested. 79, you got married. How old were you?
I was 20.
Wow. So yeah, cracking early. So you have one store. You start. I think your house is full of toys in every kind of nook and
No,
cranny.
my house was full of toys. That was our warehouse. In the end, we had a garage built, and we filled that with toys as well. So you weren't joking.
Yeah. And then you went from 1 to 3 stores. Was it in 10 years?
Yeah. So we opened after 5 years. We opened in Beaconsfield, another local town to Amersham. The turning point was April 1991. We were in a recession. Um, a larger toy retailer in the UK called Zodiac Toys had gone out of business, and there was an opportunity to take over what was a Zodiac Toys store in a shopping centre in Slough. So, for a family business, a small independent family business, to open a shop in a building that was owned by an institution, that was a big step, because our covenant was quite insignificant. And that's why you go to most shopping centres and they're filled up with the same people, because they're larger companies. They've got good covenants. They've got track record, and that's just how landlords roll.
Yeah. So at this stage, there's no faith in your life at all.
No, in fact, it was less than zero. It was minus,
Antagonistic.
because my wife had gone to church with a friend when she was expecting our daughter,
Right.
and our daughter was our third child. She came home from church with a friend. She was talking rubbish, complete rubbish. I said, "What? What have they done to you?" She said, "Well, at the end of the service, they said if you want to be prayed for in the power of the Holy Spirit, come forward." She said, "I was first up." I said, "Why?" She said, it made absolutely no sense. And the thing was, she'd found something that it was just alien to me. And she went to church reasonably regularly. She was in a home group.
Was she changed?
Yeah, she did change, yeah.
Yeah.
But my faith then, by now, is minus,
Right.
because I was so antagonistic. I didn't want anything to do with it at all. In fact, there are still a number of people that were in her home group who live locally who said, "You are really difficult, because you could have got about 6 or 8 cars in our drive." And he said, "I remember one night you came in, you parked your car in the gateway, so nobody could get out." So that led then to, also in April 1981, just as we were opening this shop in a shopping centre in Slough, to Kath buying me a ticket to a Christian men's breakfast at her local church in Chesham Boys, St Leonard's. And I really didn't want to go, but I thought, I'm just going to keep the peace. I'll just go. It's Saturday morning, but Saturdays are really important, because that was the day of the week we took most amount of money. And to be honest, it was money that motivated me more than anything in life.
Mm-hmm.
Not even probably success, but it was definitely money. So I went to this men's breakfast, got there, and there were about 60 or 80 guys there. And I looked around and I thought, I know most of you. Why are you all Christians? This is all going on in my head. I'm just trying to work out what's going on in this room, because they might have been guests. I was a guest, but I thought, if you're all Christians, then I'm mixing with you all. But I thought you were all weirdos, so I'm not quite sure. So anyway, we had a great breakfast. The speaker jumped up at the end and started talking, but he didn't talk the language of the RE lesson. That the RE lesson at school was a bit like a history lesson, really. They just taught you stuff that did happen.
Mm.
They talked about God, but they didn't talk about relationship, and they didn't talk about really the Holy Spirit. They didn't talk about the fact that God could influence our life today.
Mm-hmm.
Was interested in every part of our life today. So we learned about the miracles, and we learned about the calendar and all those great things. But so what? It wasn't, apart from a belief, it wasn't life changing. But this guy was talking about a relationship. He told us a few stories that you had to think, well, if that isn't a coincidence, then there's got to be something more to this.
Mm.
So I was quite prepared to just dismiss it as a coincidence. But I tell you what, they were really challenging.
Mm.
And I said to him, as I was walking out to dash back to work on this Saturday morning, I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from St Andrews, Chorley Wood." So I went back to work, and what I'd heard bothered me, because I was 33 and I'd never heard anything like it before. Nobody ever ever told me about this faith thing that could be, God loves me personally, knows me by name, interested in what I'm doing today, wants the best for me, loves me unconditionally. Not, I do things that I'm sure God is disappointed about, but he doesn't stop loving me. So I went back to work and I thought, I'm going to go and find that guy tomorrow, Sunday. So I was out with Kath and the children on the Sunday, and I don't know how I knew they had an evening service, but I dumped them all in the drive, shot off to Chorley Wood to go and find this church, put up in the car park, go into church, guy on the door sells me children's jewellery from the business, welcomes me and gives me a load of clobbers, books and pamphlets and papers and so much stuff as you walk in. And I went and stood at the back. I went and sat at the back thinking, I don't really know how this whole thing works, so I'm not going to go and put myself at the front. I'll sit at the back and just observe. And I'm looking around thinking, why are all these young people here? There was just loads and loads of teenagers and young people. And I thought, well, there must be something better to be doing on a Sunday night than going to church. And I just thought that church was for old people, weak people, or good people. And I didn't think I was old, good, or weak anyway. So I didn't really feel that was really for me. But I just sat there. And then a lady popped up at the front, said the service is about to start, but we've been praying about the service, and we've got 3 pictures. And the first picture was of a sailing boat on the high seas, and it can only go in the direction the wind and the tide will take it. It's got no engine. And the second picture was a big adjustable monkey wrench and nuts and bolts and springs, and something wanted to be released. And the third picture was a whole row of railway arches completely blacked out and somebody inside too frightened to come out. Now those pictures, they don't mean anything to me today. They didn't mean anything to me then. But I just listened to this and just burst out crying. And then there I am at the back of church, pretty well crying my way through an hour and a half service. And when I sat down, I was sitting on a pew all by myself, because by the time this really got underway, all the pews had filled out around me. So if I wanted to get out, I couldn't. I was hemmed in. But this service was just unbelievable. There was the preacher that night spoke on peace. And I thought, well, I don't have a lot of peace. I'm an erratic person. I see opportunities and chase it and get fed up with things quite quickly. And it was just an amazing hour and a half. It was life-changing. And that's when I realized that actually Jesus died for me. He loves me unconditionally. There's nothing I can do to lose that love. There's lots of things I can do that might upset the way that I'm behaving, might upset Jesus with the way that I'm behaving. He doesn't walk away from me. If anything, he gets closer to me and tries to help me navigate the things that I'm working through. And I just thought, this is unbelievable. And I went back, and 2 days later I told Kath what had happened, because I didn't know quite how to explain it. And she then said, which really frustrated me and annoyed me, she said, "Oh, that's fantastic. I've had all my friends praying for you." What? Anyway, so that was the beginning of an amazing journey that's been now for 32 years now, half my life. So about 6 weeks later, I'm really struggling, thinking, I'm not sure I can be a Christian and be in business. It just felt like there was a real clash of what I now believed and the way life should be and what I was actually doing in business. And I met with a local Christian accountant who was on my table at the men's breakfast. And I said, "David, I'm really struggling with this. I'm really not sure that I think I'm going to have to give the business up and go off and be a missionary." And he said, No. I don't think God might not be saying that to you. He said, but what I think you might have to do is to smarten up your act. Maybe the ways that you're running your business and being a Christian, they're not compatible. And that was really helpful. And what I've noticed over the years is that God challenges me on different things at different times. And you say, how does that challenge, do you get an email then from God? Well, I wish I did, but it's not quite like that. But you might get an email, and in it from somebody is something that is so on time, profound. You think, wow, that's amazing. Or a conversation or a confirmation of something that you're thinking. Because God can communicate with us in many ways. It says in the Bible that through dreams and visions and words of knowledge, that God will communicate with us. But I guess we've got to have our radar up. We've got to have our eyes open to hear those things. So I heard what David said, Gary. You've probably got to tidy up your act. The way you're running your business isn't compatible, and the way that that's manifested itself over 30 years and continues to evolve and change and challenge me was over the products that I was stocking. Honesty, the money isn't your money, Gary. It's the company's money, and there's tax to be paid and all those other good things. And in the end, also around some working on a Sunday. So if I deal with the products that I'm stocking, this is a little backstory here. It's 1990. It's October. I'm not a Christian. Lady comes into the Amersham shop, and she said, "Gary, I really want to challenge you over your window." So what's the problem with the window? And I thought, I know what's coming. Somebody wrote to me every year about my witch in the window because it was Halloween. And I just used to throw the letter away. But this was the first time somebody turned up in person and said, "Gary, I want to challenge you about your window. All this Halloween stuff. You're encouraging children to play with darkness." And we had a really nice conversation, and I explained that I was in business to buy and sell things and make money. And then she said to me, when I said that, "If you stop selling Halloween, the Lord will replace your lost business in other ways." And I laughed at her. I thought she was a fruitcake. And she died about 3 years ago. Lovely, lovely lady. I didn't know who she was for 10 years after she said that. And then I found out who she was, and we kept in touch. And that she really, really stepped out in faith,
Yeah.
and was most likely to get a mouthful of abuse back from me. But I remember she said that, and I didn't agree with it. But then 6 months later, I'm a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, what are you going to do about the Halloween stuff? And I asked a couple of friends that I valued their opinion. I said, how do I know what works, what doesn't work with this Christian faith thing? I said, particularly around this whole area of Halloween. And then a friend quoted me a Bible verse, don't know where it is, but quoted me a Bible verse, and it's because I said, is it evil? Because that was the inference that I was asked, getting children to play with things that were evil. I said, is it evil then? So she said, so that this Bible verse says, avoid that even appears to be evil. So I didn't have to sort of justify as to whether it was evil. There was enough about the Halloween stuff to think it appears, avoid that even appears to be evil.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, you know what? I'm not going to sell Halloween this year.
Costly.
Massive risk. We sell loads of it. So I threw away all the stock that I had left.
Wow.
And I didn't stock it in October 1991. But that isn't the best bit of the story. The best bit of the story was what the lady said to me when she said, if you stop selling Halloween, the Lord will replace your lost business in other ways. And in October of 1991, we had the biggest increase in turnover in 1 month than we'd ever experienced.
Wow.
Now, people might say, oh, that's a coincidence as well. Yeah, okay, could be a coincidence, but the trouble is it keeps working. And in 1 Samuel 2, it says, those that honour me, I will honour.
Yeah.
And I thought, it works. And I needed to know fairly early on that God was real. This wasn't some mindset that I'd stumbled across. God actually works. He's alive and living, and he is interested in the success of my business, and he is interested in the way that I choose to run my business. But also, the challenges that God's given me have been challenges for me personally. They haven't necessarily been things that I should be encouraging other people to do, because God challenges everybody in different ways. Now, it could be that an awful lot of Christians don't think that Halloween is the right thing to practice and to promote. Not everybody. Some churches have Halloween parties. An awful lot of churches have light parties. So God hasn't given me the role of being a spiritual policeman. He just wants me to be faithful in the things that he's challenged me in.
Yeah.
And other people will be challenged in other ways. And I'll think, why are you doing that? I don't get it. But it's for me to say, well done. Get on with it. You do that because it could be that God. When I get, I'm hoping I'm going to heaven. But when I get there, I really hope God's going to say to me, Gary, I didn't say to you do that, but I know why you did it. Your motive was right. You did it because you thought I said that. So well done. So over the years on those products, the way in which God has interacted with me when things are presented. And it's impossible for me to know the backstory to everything. And things are put on my desk, and I don't do all the buying now, so it's a little bit more remote, but things we put on my desk, and something in me felt uncomfortable. It was a gut feel.
Yeah.
Now you might say, well, that's a pretty strange way of running a business, on gut feel, but that's how God seems to get me like that. So there's been lots and lots of different things. I guess the highest profile one is that I chose not to stock Harry Potter.
Yeah.
The product we put on my desk, I felt really uncomfortable. Really, there was like a spiritual something in me, and I decided to not stock Harry Potter. So when the headlines say the man who banned Harry Potter, you never have the words come out of my mouth that I banned Harry Potter. I've never promoted other retailers or suppliers not to stock or do Harry Potter. I've chosen not to stock Harry Potter for a particular reason. And all I would say to parents and grandparents, when you're buying toys for your children and your grandchildren, and not just toys, computer games, whatever you're buying, make sure you're comfortable with them. Yeah. And if you are, buy them. And if you're not, no, don't buy them. Yeah. But God never said, Gary, you need to get this brand banned. And even then, I would think more Christians don't understand my stance on Harry Potter than on Halloween. It's a real challenge. But then on the other hand, I think I'm doing what God's told me to do.
And they were the biggest grossing toys, were they? So it was nuts in a business sense.
Well, it was, because whatever year that Harry Potter was launched, it was the biggest toy of the year. And that particular year, I was chairman of the Toy Retailers Association. And at the big dinner in London, where we're awarding all the best-selling toys of the year, Harry Potter was the best-selling toy for that year. And Lego made a full-size Harry character. So there was Gary and Harry on the stage and all the photographs, handing out all the certificates. The industry thought it was hilarious. But that's the point. I've just, I'm not going to worry about that because I'm peaceful about it. I think I did what I thought the Lord say I needed to do.
And you didn't lose money?
No, we had a good year. But there's thousands of great toys on the market. Yeah. So we just sold other things. And then the honesty thing, well, honest is honesty. We just got to be honest the way we approach things. We're honest with ourselves, honest with our customers, honest with our staff. Honesty pays. Our business has gone from strength to strength since I would say I've got nothing to hide. You can take all my books apart, if there's any issues that you find, it's a mistake. It's not because we've been clever or come up with a wheeze. And then Sunday trading, which was a few years later, because the law didn't change until 1995. It changed in the June, and I thought, oh Lord, what am I going to do about working on a Sunday? One of the 10 Commandments, keep the Sabbath holy. So I thought I'd pray about it. Lord, is it okay to open on a Sunday? No answer. God, shall I be working on a Sunday? No answer. Gets to September of 1995, and I'm praying. I'm thinking, God, what is the point in praying if you don't answer prayer? And I felt God nudge me and quietly say, Gary, no amount of praying is going to get me to change my mind. So sometimes we know the outcome, but we're praying for a different outcome. I really wanted and thought I should be probably opening on a Sunday, but I really wanted God to bless that and to give me an okay for that. Well, he didn't want to do that. So praying a third time, fourth time, 25th time, 30th time, that was never going to work. So we said, okay, fair enough. We won't open our stores on a Sunday. Well, up to then it was irrelevant anyway. But then going forward, as the years go forward, the landlords were insisting, particularly of the shopping centres, that if we wanted to open a shop, we had to open on Sundays, work on a Sunday. So we said, well, we're not going to sign the lease then. We're not going to work on Sundays. And a little bit of a breakthrough came, I don't know whether it might be near 2000s, but the landlord of of the Blue Water Shopping Centre, which is one of the biggest regional shopping centres in the country, rang me and said, the toy shop this June, the toy shop's closing. Would you take the toy shop over and run it till Christmas? And I said, yeah, we would do, but we won't work on Sundays. They said, oh, don't worry about the Sunday stuff. Just if you could just keep it going until Christmas, that would be really helpful. So we took it over and we put the entertainer up above the door and off we went. And then we got round to November, late November, and the landlord said, would you like to stay another year? And I said, yeah, we would actually. We're really pleased with trade here. I said, by the way, why aren't the Sundays a problem to you? Because I was still getting lots of aggravation in other shopping centres where we couldn't open. They said, oh, you take more money in 6 days than the previous toy retailer took in 7. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm an outstanding toy retailer. It might have been that the other retailer was a poor quality retailer and we sold different things and we sold it well. But I didn't see it like that. I'm not trying to find ways of not giving God the glory. There's a fantastic song here. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to you. Yeah. So if I'm trying to every turn say, well, that was a coincidence. Well, that was lucky, wasn't it? Well, then that's no faith. And I would really encourage people not to try God, or to test him, but just read 2 Corinthians, or is it 1 Corinthians 30, the bit that says, those that honour me, I will honour. Just read that bit and think, you know what, I'm going to give this a go because I think you might be amazed. But when the amazing things happen, don't say, well, that was lucky or that's a coincidence, because actually God's in it.
Yeah. And Malachi 3:10 does say, test me in this and see if I won't open the floodgates of heaven, pour out so much blessing so that you will not be able to contain it. So,
well, somebody said to me the other day, your business, this is a senior person who's been a CEO of a couple of very large retail businesses. I'm just having coffee with him. He said, your business is 1 in 1,000. For a startup to survive 5 years, I can't remember the statistics, but a startup to survive 10 years, and for a startup to, in effect, go to 40 years as a family business without lots of backup from big corporations and piles of cash. So for our business to have survived Woolworths closing, Toys R Us closing, the internet coming in, the 2008-9 financial crisis, COVID, we've suffered just about every possible challenge that any business would have had to have faced. And yet we've still come out. I'm not suggesting in 2024 that we're in now that life is really easy. We're going through a financial crisis. Many families are struggling to make ends meet. The food banks have never been so busy with families just holding on to basic things in life, and toys aren't basic. But it's a miracle. It's just quite unbelievable. God has been faithful.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many areas we haven't got that much time to tap into. But for example, COVID, you got your store, wherever it was, that had all those Arctic sort of lorries, and suddenly people really need food. So what does Gary do?
Well, that was... So the Trestle Trust is, their CEO is a lady called Emma. And I had coffee with Emma in January of 2020 because I just love charities that support children, family, and youth. It's just what we do. And I said as we passed, "Lovely to meet you, Emma." Shaking her hand, "Gareth, if there's anything I can ever do to help you, just give me a ring." Well, COVID. Maybe there were a few people talking about COVID on a cruise ship somewhere, but it wasn't. Nobody had any idea what we were just about to face into. And then I get a phone call from Emma. Our shop's closed on the 25th of March. I get a phone call from Emma in April saying, "Gary, you said if there's anything you could ever do to help us, we got a bit of a dilemma. The food banks are being inundated with demand up and down the country because lots of people, all their income stopped, and people just had to turn to food banks because the demand was off the clock. And also because people will remember the stupidity over toilet rolls, where people were buying 4 times more toilet rolls than they really needed because they were going to be short. And what happened in that period is that the affluent people with the money had the ability to hoard, and the people that were living week to week with their allowances and their benefits those people could only afford to buy this week what they needed this week. But as food became scarce, those poor people, literally, they couldn't even buy the basics that they wanted to buy with little amount of money that they had. So the Trestle Trust weren't getting the level of donations that they'd previously been used to, but the demand was huge. So she said, we've been offered 240 Arctics of stock.
Arctic lorries, yeah.
6 lorries a day, 5 days a week for 8 weeks. And all the stock was going to be delivered in bulk. So all the pallets of volume coming off the lorry would have been a whole pallet full of baked beans, or a whole pallet of cornflakes, or a whole pallet of something else. But what the food banks wanted was a little bit of everything off all the pallets. They didn't want a whole pallet of baked beans. So what we agreed to do was to take in all this volume of stock, to rework the pallets into the demands that the different food banks wanted, and to deliver them to hubs around the country. So our warehouse staff came to work, but they weren't moving toys now, they were moving food. Our drivers came to work and they were towing food and not toys. And somebody else, apart from the person who gave the food, another business, gave us the money to pay for the staff and for all the diesel in our lorries. Brilliant. So we just used our premises, and we used our equipment. And when I talk about generosity, which I do, and I love talking about generosity and inspiring people to be generous, if I said to people, what do you think I mean by generosity? They'll say, it's money. And it is money. In most cases, it is money. Charities cannot do the things they do without people being generous with their money. But also, 2 other areas of generosity is be generous with your time. For those of us that are slightly older, making sure we reinvest, find time for younger people, encourage younger people, give them opportunities in life to succeed and to grow. And then the third thing is, wherever we have equipment around us, and everybody's got something, you might have a mower and you can mow your neighbour's lawn, or you might have a car to take someone to the hospital, and I had a warehouse and an Arctic so I can move food. Use what you've got for common good. That's also generosity.
So beautiful. Hey folks, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I'm loving the response we're getting from across the world. It's just wonderful to see how encouraging and inspiring it is being and hitting the spot. Listen, if you are being blessed by it, I'd love it. Basically, this happens under the auspices of our ministry, Great Lakes Outreach, which works in the poorest and the hungriest country in the world, which is Burundi. We're having an incredible impact in the toughest of circumstances. We want to carry on supporting those local folks doing a great job. So if you wanted to, greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. You could make a donation there. I'd so appreciate it. Also, it's word of mouth, isn't it? So gossip these podcasts to other people, get them to subscribe, give us a great review. Absolutely wonderful. So grateful to you. So that's greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. If you want to do a monthly, a couple of quid a month, or a one-off donation, we'd be incredibly grateful. All right, now let's get back to the podcast. I love the fact that you're such a crystal clear Christian witness. Articles, Guardian's not exactly massively pro-Christian, but I was reading an article about you in there, and you're just not willing to compromise at any level. And I love the influence you have in the industry. So tell us about how, I'm thinking of one particular incident with some product where just being clear, I think it was your son in America and both your boys in the family business, how, just being clear completely changed the trajectory of a product.
So Kath would say, the thing is about Gary, he's got a gene missing. And I say, well, what is that then? She said, you don't care what people think. And actually, particularly from my Christian faith perspective, to a large degree, I really don't. And therefore, I'm really happy to be shot at, not literally, but to be challenged, because I just know that God is real for me. And I really hope he's real for so many other people. But God speaks to us in mysterious ways. God's also spoken to us through letters. So one in particular, I was asked to speak in. We're in Jersey now. We're not Jersey citizens. We're UK citizens, but we just love coming to the island. So I was asked, would you speak to the senators at their prayer breakfast? And I said, yeah, no problems. And I thought afterwards, oh, what are you going to say, Gary? And I felt God say to me, well, tell them about Rig. I said, well, what's Rig? And he said, Gary, it's easy. It's RIG. Reputation, integrity, and generosity. I said, okay, Lord, I'll have to just work that out. Anyway, I worked it all out, and then they cancelled the prayer breakfast. But I've used that to so many young children when I've spoken in schools: reputation, integrity, and generosity. And then OMG. So we all know what OMG stands for, and it's just a form of blaspheming. So when Stuart, my second oldest son, was in the US, this range of dolls, which people know, LOL dolls. They launched a range of LOL OMG dolls. And Stuart said to the guy who owns this, international company, because they're sold throughout the world, well, there's no way I'm selling dolls with OMG on the box. We're just not going to promote blasphemy. And he said, it's not what you think it is. So Stuart said, well, what is it then? And he said, I'll tell you tomorrow. So in other words, he hadn't got a clue. So the next day, Stuart goes into the showroom and says, okay, what does OMG stand for? He said, they are the original Millennium Girls. And every single box of OMG dolls, if you look at them, underneath the letters OMG, it actually is written on it, the original Millennium Girls. So we are stocking OMG boxes with OMG on, only out of respect for the company that came up with something. Whether I believe that they're the original Millennium Girls or not, it doesn't matter. But the fact is, he thought about it and he changed the direction of that product down to OMG. And of course, I'm still interested in making money, and I'm utterly commercial. And this was another statement that Kath made. In many ways, we're interested in what money can actually do, the difference it can make. Money doesn't make a difference in the bank. It doesn't change people's lives. It doesn't lift them out of poverty. It doesn't solve anything sitting in the bank. It's dormant. It's a dormant asset. But money can make a massive amount of difference when it's invested in the right way to support charities. So we support a whole number of different charities, and they're charities that I just love what they're doing. They're mainly smaller charities where somebody's got a vision. It's normally an individual small charity with a vision. And what we're trying to do is to match provision with vision and enable something to make it happen. And we've got a charity we've been working with for about 5 years called Growing Hope. I'll tell you about Restore Hope in a minute. Hope is currently the in word, but 20 years ago, God gave us Restoring Hope. But Growing Hope is a small charity that started running clinics out of Pete Hughes' church in King's Cross, clinics working with children with difficulties, just supporting parents that were on waiting lists for years and years and years. And Naomi Fox is now, I think, got 6 clinics up and running, and she has this vision to have, I think, 20 by the end of the decade, and she's going to do it. She's absolutely going for
Beautiful.
it.
Yeah.
So that's Growing Hope. So Restore Hope, where did that come from? Well, when I became a Christian, we moved out to nearly Great Missenden from Amersham, and when we looked at this house, God gave me a number of pictures. One was where there was a 3-acre field with the house, and I could just see children running all over the field. And then there was a 2-bedroom little annex, and I thought the Lord would say, "I'll use that. I'll use that." So it was a nonsense that we managed to buy this house, because it was, I think, 1993. There was a bit of a housing slump. This house was way more than I can afford, and I went in this stage and said, I want to buy that house. This is what I can afford, but in order to afford that, I've got to sell my house in Amersham for the asking price. He said, well, firstly, the people selling it aren't going to accept your offer, and you're not going to sell your house at the asking price. Anyway, to cut a long story short, within 8 weeks we'd moved, and God had given me these 2 pictures. So the children's one, how did that work through? Well, we started having a little minibus out from Lambeth, where one of Kath's nursing friends was running a children's youth group there, and then there was a double-decker bus from the same place, and there was a double-decker bus and a coach, and we just did fantastic things with the kids. They did biscuit making, and at the time, the guy that was the model maker from Blue Peter, who was a local Christian, he did craft with the kids, and they did swimming, and they did music, and they did wide games. We just gave them a fantastic day out. And for me, it was all about giving those children a dream and a memory. It was different to their inner city existence. And then after that, we took why do things small when you can do it big? Because it's small, it's just hard work. So we were going to a concert at Wembley Stadium, champion of the world, that Noel Richards was organising.
Yeah.
So we thought, oh, we'll take a coach full. So we hired a coach and filled it full of people and went off to this concert. In the middle of that noise, music, worship, obviously, but in the middle of the noise in that stadium, God said to me, Gary, you need to set up a charity, call it Restore Hope, and work with families and children that are struggling. So being an instant person, I thought that was tomorrow. But anyway, this took about 5 years trying to figure it out. And by this time we're living in Chorleywood, and we were still having the coaches out of London with the kiddies on. And a kid got off the coach one day and looked at our house in Chorleywood opposite the Common and said, wow, mate, how many flats is this? I said, just one house. He said, what? The council own it. And it's amazing the way things are said at a moment in time that change, they resonate with you and they change what you do. So we said, oh, well, these kids had the very best ice creams, the very best crisps, not the value crisps. They did everything they wanted to do, the best burgers, not the cheap burgers. We really spoilt them. But I thought that day that I was sending them home with envy. It really challenged me. So so Kath and I talked about it. I said, if we're going to carry on having these children out, it can't be from our house. We've got to do it independently. And then a farm came on the market just literally 300 meters down the road. It was going to auction. We did all the research for it. We got the funding in place, went to the auction. And just as when I thought I was buying it, the hammer was just about to go down. 2 property developers at the front of the room doubled the price in 10 minutes. Oh. So I said, oh, Lord, what was all that about? Somebody had given me a word on the Sunday before, not knowing that the auction was on the Monday for this particular farm. They came running up to me at church and said, Gary, oh, God's given me a word for you. I said, oh, great. What is it? Go for it. So I thought, yeah, I'm definitely going to go for it. And then we lost it. So I thought, Lord, what was the go for it? What happened? Did I not get it right? But anyway, within 6 months, the Latimer Park estate came on the market. So God got us ready to go for it with what failed. But actually, that wasn't the prize. The prize was Latimer Park. This wasn't a few acres of land that the old farm was. This is 360 acres of land, yeah. The barn and a lake. And so the day it came on the market, I'm sitting there saying to these guys that are selling it, right, I'm definitely going to buy it. I'll give the asking price. I just buy it. No idea how I was going to raise the money, but this was in year 2002. They were crazy times when banks just lent you money, even if you couldn't afford it. They're just happy to lend you money. In fact, they even sent you the money before you even signed the documents. It was crazy. It's not like it now. So anyway, long story short, 6 months later, bought Latimer Park, and Kath and I bought the house, and the rest of it we put into a charity called Restore Hope. And we've worked with families and children for the last 22 years now. We've had some of the most amazing stories back from families. Mums will say, the thing is about Restore Hope, they don't judge me. They love me. It's like family down here. They've picked me up when I've fallen over. I wouldn't have got through bringing up my children. Some of these mums that are single mums, I can always turn to them. It's just been amazing to hear the stories, to know that we've actually got mums to just get through life with their children. And just this year, we've acquired the old Methodist church right in the middle of Amersham, St John's Methodist Church. And I heard 3 years ago that this church was going to be knocked down and turned into flats. And I thought, no way, that is such a great community asset. And I did a presentation to the Methodist Association and said, look, we really want to take this church over and turn it into like a community hub. I've got no other way, they're not the right words, but I've got no other way of describing it at the moment. And it took 3 years of persuading them, letting them think about it, letting the vision sink in. And then they came to us and said, we'd love Restore Hope Latimer to buy it. We agreed the price, and in January this year, we actually bought it, and we're going through now refurbishing the building with a view to opening in autumn of 2025. Just taking the services into the middle of Amersham, where it's easier for mums and prams and people to get to, widening the work to work with older folk as well, because we're going to have a community cafe in there, a warm space. From the Message Trust up in Manchester, we'll be having a community grocery, so not free food, but highly subsidised food, so mums can now buy the food that their children want in a highly subsidised way. It's not charity, there's more dignity involved. We're putting in a training kitchen next door so that we can actually teach mums how to cook, so they can take ingredients that are much cheaper than ready-made meals, and just
Wonderful.
Help them along, because we need to break the circle of poverty.
Yeah.
And the only way we're doing that is to help parents work within the budget that they have, rather than them getting into debt.
Yeah.
So that's my latest passion, as it were. It's occupied a lot of time. I'm involved slightly less with the business now. We've put in more senior management, more experienced managers, as our business gets bigger and more complicated. But I guess at 66, probably you're thinking more about legacy. Is it the biggest toy retailer in the country? No, that's not going to achieve too much. Is it knowing, even from a distance, looking over the fence at just children's lives that have been changed, giving children a vision? There was one story, and I'll shut up then Simon. But one kiddie was on one of our beach trips. We hired two coaches in the summer, take families and children to the beach. And one of our staff was talking to one of these kiddies and saying, what are you going to do when you leave school? I think he was about 11. He said, I don't know. I said, what do your brothers do who were older? They don't work. What does your dad do? He doesn't work. So you're thinking, this is just going to be another circle of... And this helper said to this little lad, but I think you could be a plumber when you leave school. And about 3 or 4, 6 months later, we're having a barbecue for the families, and this kid is down on the field playing with his family, and he sees this Restore Hope Latimer member of staff, and he comes running up to him and says, I'm going to be a plumber when I leave school. That little lad has had a seed planted in his life, in his mind, that if that happens, his direction of life will be completely change because of one word in season. So what I would encourage everybody on your podcast is, one, if you don't know Jesus, just get on the train. You just do an Alpha course and find out what it is that honestly has just completely and utterly changed my life and radically changed my business. It's the most amazing journey. You'll never regret finding out more. If you do an Alpha course and none of it makes sense, at least you've invested 8 evenings of your whole life to say, but I did investigate it. It's not really for me, or it didn't quite click. On the other hand, you might say, wow, I wish I'd done it. And when I was at 33, why hadn't anybody told me? I was really angry in a way that for 33 years of my life, I didn't know that Jesus loved me that much. So if you don't know Jesus, do an Alpha course. If you do know Jesus, listen to what he's saying and get out and do it. Just do the stuff, make a difference in somebody's life, be as generous as you possibly can. And if you can, particularly if you're older like me, pass the baton on to a younger person to enable them to make the best of their life they possibly can. Don't let them survive, let them thrive in their life.
Wonderful. Gary Grant, cheering you on, brother. Keep it up. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Simon.
Brilliant. Oh, folks, I know you can be inspired. I've got this cheesy grin of Gary's joy. And listen, gossip this podcast to your mates, pass it on. We all need to hear good news. I want to thank Adam Thomas Steer for the editing, Mike Sanderman for the mixing. It'd be helpful if you gave us a great review on Spotify, iTunes. Next week, another fantastic guest doing something completely different. Bring it on. Meantime, have a good week. God bless you, and toodaloo.